Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Shay. Today is laundry day and also it's The Last of Us Day. I make content about horror movies, horror video games, horror TV shows, and theme parks because I live in Central Florida and I feel like it would be a crime not to. And if you're not new here, welcome back. You guys probably have seen that I've been doing Last of Us recaps, but I didn't do one last week. I explained in my last video why I didn't do one, so we're going to actually do a double one. But before we get into it, I have a few things I wanted to go over. So, this week I was supposed to do Poppy Playtime Chapter 2. That is not going to be happening anytime soon right now. I'm going to try my hardest to get it to work, but I need to upgrade the RAM on my computer. The game literally would not run, not even worrying about recording it, it just would not run. It would start up and then it would just keep the music would keep skipping, and then if I hit start new game, it would go through the whole intro sequence, and then when I actually got in the game, it would just freeze. And then I couldn't do anything and it just kept happening. So I have to upgrade the RAM in my computer, which is something that I'm going to work on within the next couple of weeks. And hopefully we can get Poppy Playtime Chapter 2, 3, and 4 out. Just really hoping for that because I really wanted to play it. I was so excited to play it the other day and then this happened. So yeah, not gonna have Poppy Playtime Chapter 2 this week. We're gonna have a different video, but I'm actually gonna push it to next week because I'm not going to be here next week. I'm actually going to visit my family for Mother's Day next weekend, so I will be gone. I usually stay with my family for about a week when I go to visit them, and then I come home. So I'll be gone for Mother's Day, and then I'll be back, and then I'll be back to recording. Hopefully by that time I will have figured out the recording situation, the RAM situation, and I can do Poppy Playtime Chapter 2. But since I won't be here, there won't be a Last of Us recap next week, so we'll have another double up the week after. And also, I don't really have another video queued up because the plan was to have Poppy Playtime this week and then Yellow Jackets next week. But Yellow Jackets is still going to be next week. There's just not going to be any other second video on Thursday. We're just going to do this one video this week and call it a day, because there's nothing else I can do. So I wanted to get that out of the way first and foremost. And like I said, it is a double video today. We're going to be talking about episodes 3 and 4 of The Last of Us Season 2. And I just wanted to get that out here, just to let you guys know what's going to be going on in the next couple of weeks, because it's going to be a doozy. And also, if you haven't seen Sinners yet, I'm still stuck on Sinners. If you haven't seen Sinners yet, please go see it. Please go do the thing, go watch the movie, and come back and tell me how you liked it, because I can't stop thinking about that movie. I'm supposed to go see it again next week, but I'm not sure for sure when I'm going to have time to go see it. So I'm really hoping that if I can see it next week, that I'll get another chance to watch this movie, because it's living rent-free in my brain, so much so. It's kind of like how I felt after I watched The Substance. I couldn't stop thinking about The Substance, and that's how I feel about Sinners. I could not stop thinking about Sinners. That's how you know it's a movie that slaps for me. But in any case, we're not here to talk about Sinners. That's what we talked about last week. We are here to talk about The Last of Us. Now, episodes 3 and 4 take up after Joel's passing. If you didn't watch the last video I did about The Last of Us, Joel got. He got the absolute life literally beaten out of him by Abby, and now Ellie is on a warpath. In episode 3, we start off with Tommy actually going into the morgue and cleaning off Joel's, hands and stuff, and seeing his watch, and of course dealing with the grief, which I thought was a really nice scene, just seeing Tommy deal with the grief of losing his brother. And he sees the watch that Joel always wore, and that's gonna come up later. Then we cut to Ellie, who's in the hospital because of the injuries that she sustained when she was, out with Joel and everything like that. And she is, kind of in and out. The doctors are trying to, nurses are trying to check on her, see how she's doing. But then she opens her eyes and she looks ahead of her and she's actually seeing Abby killing Joel again. So she starts screaming. They inject her with some stuff to put her back to sleep. And then eventually she goes back to sleep. We do see her wake up in the hospital. She has to talk to, I think it's Gail. I think that's the name of their therapist again. She has to talk to Gail and, kind of show that she's okay. Like, she's okay with the whole thing that happened. And of course, we know how Ellie is. She's not a very emotional person. She just kind of wears a poker face. So she's like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm fine. Okay, he died, you know, it sucks, but it is what it is, you know, people die. It's just, this is the world we live in. And they're like, and so Gil's like, okay, well, if you ever need anything, you know where I am. And Ellie's like, okay, I don't need anything. Don't worry about me. And she finally gets released to go back home. And so she goes back home to her house that she shared with Joel. And of course, it's this moment where she's walking around and she's really, really emotional. There's a really, just a really sad moment where she goes into Joel's closet and starts sniffing one of his jackets, which I think is very indicative of anybody who's lost a parent. Like, I haven't actually experienced that, but I've known a lot of people who've lost parents, and it's kind of indicative of that, like just wanting to remember those little things about them. And it's a very emotional scene. But of course, then it's interrupted by Dina coming in, because Dina, you know, she got to come back. So Dina comes in and she says to Ellie, she brings Ellie some cookies and she's like, hey, I got to tell you something and you're going to be really mad at me. And Ellie's like, what? Why? And she's like, I know all of the people who were involved in Joel's murder. I know their names. I know their professions. I know who they work for. And she's like, I've known this the entire time. So Ellie's like, what? Why didn't she say anything? And she's like, you know, because like I just didn't know what to do. So Ellie, of course, is ready to get up and get like on her horse and get out there and potentially go find Abby and kill her. But Dina's like, hold on, hold your horses. We can't just go out there and try to take on this secret organization, or not secret, but this organization, you know, all on our own. We need to talk to the town. So Ellie goes, you know, Ellie goes back to the town hall. They have a town hall meeting. She actually talks to Tommy first, and Tommy's like, I agree with you. We should go find these people, but we need to take it up with the town because we're still healing as a town. Because remember, Jackson got absolutely destroyed by the infected. So yeah, he's like, yeah, I agree with you, and I want to get these guys too, but look at our town. Like, people are really scared. People are really grieving. So they decide to hold a town hall, and everybody kind of has to make their case as to why they are for or against, why they're for or against sending soldiers out to go and attack Abby and her friends. So it's kind of an interesting scene, that scene especially, because it sort of brings up something that I think a lot of movies, especially apocalyptic movies, tend to leave out of their storytelling. And that is that um, everybody loses somebody in these type of environments. There is one woman who like gets up on a chair and she says, honestly, she said, I understand, I understand where you're coming from, Ellie, but we've all had to bury somebody after this, the whole thing. We've all had to bury somebody, and now you're asking us to send more people out there for and leave us vulnerable. You're sending all your best guns out there, and you're leaving us vulnerable to possibly another attack. Like, what would happen if raiders show up? If the infected come back? Like, what would happen? And so, you know, people are kind of like, yeah, yeah. And I thought that was good, because that's something that I think a lot of, you know, even war movies tend to leave out. It's like everybody loses something in these types of environments. Sorry, my cat was running by. Everybody loses something in these types of environments. And oftentimes when we watch these movies, since we're so focused on the protagonist of the story, or movies, TV shows, we're so focused on the protagonist of the story, we're not really thinking about all the other people who are affected by the protagonist's actions. So in this case, you know, Joel and Ellie's relationship is kind of like, I guess you could say it's the catalyst for all this. You know, Joel and Ellie, you know, traveled together. Joel found out that Ellie was immune. They went to the Fireflies. You know, Joel found out that they were going to have to kill Ellie in order to create the cure. He kills everybody, and it just keeps going and going and going until finally it is just, you're just unable to deal with. There's nothing you can do at this point. So yeah, Ellie is, you know, like, this person is definitely right that even though she feels Ellie's pain, we've all lost something because of this story. and we can't leave ourselves vulnerable. And then surprisingly, the guy, I think his name is Sam, I believe so, the guy who in the first episode was incredibly homophobic to both Ellie and Dina, he like gets up and he says, no, we got to fight for our people. We got to show them that we're not no slouches. Like, we got to fight for our people. Like, these people came and took one of our own and destroyed him. We need to show that we are tough. And he's like standing with Ellie, and I was like, wow, character development, Sam. Like, wow. So then Ellie gets up and she reads this very poignant speech about how, it's not about just about Joel and her, it's about Jackson. It's about, showing people that they are not slouches, and that like I said, they're not slouches, that they can handle themselves, and letting these people know that you can't just come in, you're not going to be able to come in here and just slaughter us or whatever. And she gives this big speech, and then the council has to vote on, what's going to happen. And so they all bring their votes in, and then when they're counted, no one ends up winning. And surprisingly enough, Maria and Tommy both voted yes. But it seems like I think there was one other person, we don't know who, but they voted yes. And I think everybody else on the council voted no. So basically they said, this fight is not worth sending our people out there to die. So unfortunately, you're out of luck, Ellie. So, of course, we all know Ellie. She is tenacious, and there is nothing that is going to stop her. So, of course, she gets home. She sees that Tommy gave her Joel's weapon. And she's thinking to herself, okay, what do I do? Because they said no. And then Dina shows up, and Ellie's been packing to leave, and she's like freaking out, and she's like, wait. So she goes and she opens the door, trying to tell, like, Dina that she was just working out, she's tired, and she was just she was just working out, she was getting ready to go to bed, and Dina's like, yeah, opens the door and sees all the equipment and gear laying on the floor, and she's just kind of like, okay, so, what is your plan? So Ellie tells her, well, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to go do this. And it's like a really bad plan from the sounds of it. So Dina's like, yeah, okay, if you go through that route, you'll either run into infected or you'll run into raiders. And then, like, she starts naming off all the bad things that could possibly happen to Ellie. So then she's kind of like, okay, here, I mapped out a route for us. And she brings out a map and she shows her how they're going to go up there. And then Ellie's kind of like, we? Like, wait, what? What do you mean we? And Dina's like, well, you're not the only one who loved Joel. And so it's like kind of like, okay, yeah, Joel meant a lot to her too. So she's like, I want to get revenge. And I honestly, even if Dina didn't love Joel, I would want to get revenge for those people drugging me. I'd want to get revenge for that. Because, like, they don't know if that could have killed me. And I know that one girl was a nurse, but, like, you don't know what, like, physical ailments I might have. I might have, like, some sort of physical ailment. And then considering what she finds out in episode 4, which we'll get to, the wolves, which is who they're affiliated with, the wolves, they would have been done. They would have been slaughtered. They would have been done. So Dina and Ellie decide that they're going to go. Dina says that she's able to get them one horse, that's it. And she's like, pack for, this type of weather, that type of weather, make sure you're ready to go at 3 a.m. So when she gets to the gate, Dina's there, and then Sam walks up with the horse, and he's like, you guys go take care of business. You guys go handle this. And then Ellie's like, yeah, don't worry, we will. I guess, like, she's very anxious around him still because of what he said. She's just kind of like, but thanks for the horse. So her and Dina set off on this journey. Before they leave, she goes and says, goodbye to Joel. She goes to his grave and touches it, and it's beautiful. And then they go off, and they're, having a great little ride, trying to get to Seattle to find the wolves. Meanwhile, there is a group, and I believe they're called the Seraphites. I really don't remember. They say the name in episode 4, the one that just aired last night, but for some reason I don't remember it for sure. Because like I said, I barely played the game, so I guess they're called the Seraphites. I don't know, because they also said scars, so I don't know. I think they're Seraphites though, and they're basically like a religious cult. They worship some person that used to lead them, who has now since passed on, that they think when she passed on, she became a god, or a goddess, whichever way you want to look at it. They're all bald, except for the women. You know, all the men are bald, and they wear robes, so they look like monks. And they do not use any machine weaponry. They use mostly like knives and bow and arrows and everything like that. So they're walking because they now had to escape from wherever they were at, and they have this thing where they have one guy that stays in one direction, and he kind of looks to see if there's any threats, and then he'll whistle a certain whistle to let them know that there's a threat. Well, they're walking and they're talking, and then all of a sudden they hear that whistle, and they're like, what? And then everything goes silent. And then you see the bushes move, and you kind of know someone's about to go down, but you don't see it. So then, Dina and Ellie are riding through, and they get to this one stop, and they see all of these, you know, the Seraphites slaughtered on the ground. And they get off their horse. They're like, who did this? What what could have done this? And Dina hears a noise, you know, in like the direction to her right. And so she pulls her weapon out. She walks towards it. And then Ellie's kind of investigating everything. And then Dina comes out, and she's just gonna be sick. So she goes and she throws up. And Ellie, so Ellie's like, what are you getting sick about? She's like, back there. So Ellie goes, walks over there, and she sees all of the Seraphites' bodies in like a pit. And there's children and babies and things like that. It's really rough. I don't know if there's babies, but there's children. There was definitely children in that pit, and it's rough. So, then she comes out, and Dina's kind of like, that's never happened to me before. Like, I've never gotten sick. I've seen so much stuff, and I've never gotten sick. And like Ellie's like, it's okay, whatever. So they decide they're gonna keep going because they don't want to see what possibly could have caused this scene in front of them. So they leave. We have this little adventure where they're, going. They're in the tent and they're talking. It's rain because it was raining. They're in the tent and they're talking, and Dina asks her about the kiss that they shared in the first episode, and they're kind of like joking with each other. But Ellie's not sure if Dina likes her or not, because Dina's really not playing it like one way or another. I mean, we all know Dina likes her, but she's not playing it one way or another. So then they eventually do get to Seattle towards the end of the episode. And as they get to Seattle, they look down into the road and they realize, oh crap, there's a lot more wolves than we thought. These people have tanks. These people have armor. These people are like legit soldiers. And they're just like, oh crap. So yeah, not going to be as easy as Ellie would have probably liked it to be. And that's where episode 3 leaves off. So now we're going to get into the episode that aired yesterday, which is was really good. It was really good. It was really quickly paced, actually. Like, when it ended, I was kind of shocked that it ended. I was like, oh wait, like it's done? Because it was just moving, like, and it felt like so much happened. So the episode opens up with a flashback to 2018, and it's a group of Fedra agents, and they're heading to some sort of mark in Seattle. And one of the Fedra agents, of course, he's like one of those like tough guys, and they're making jokes and like talking about how they beat up voters, which voters is what they call citizens because they took away their rights. Pause. So it's what they call citizens, and this one guy, he's sitting up front and he's just like, we call them voters because of that. And he explains that, and they're all like, oh, okay. So then the driver sees that there's a bunch of people coming, and he's like, hey, hey, Sergeant. And then the sergeant looks over and he's like, okay. He gets up, he tells the guys to stay in there. He's going to go talk to them. And he jumps out, walks up, and this woman walks up. There's a bunch of people, and this, they're just chilling. And this woman walks up, and she goes, are you Isaac? And he's like, yeah. And then he says her name. It begins with an H. I can't pronounce it. But he says, are you? And then she's like, yeah. So then they're looking at each other for a minute. And then he just takes some grenades off of his vest and throws them into the Fedra truck and closes the door. And then when the driver falls out, gasping for air, he just unloads his weapon on him. So he had let one of the soldiers come out, and he told the soldier, he was like, you have a choice. Like, you can be like them, or you can be with us. And then it goes back to 11 years later, which is where we're at with Ellie and Dina. And in this part, they're going through the pharmacy, trying to find some supplies, just in case they get injured or they get sick. And as she's going through the pharmacy, Dina, as Dina's going through the pharmacy, she stops and she sees something, and we don't get to see what it is. I figured it out. I clocked it before they explained it. But she ends up picking it up, and then she puts it in her bag, she tells Ellie that she has to go to the bathroom. And I'm just like, but yeah, so then her and Ellie, they're going, they see that there's a building with the letters WLF, which is for the wolves, that's painted on it, and Ellie's like, yeah, let's go. And then Dina's like, okay, no, because if you were in their situation, you would put something big up so people could find you. And she goes, that means likely they're prepared, they have a plan. We can't really go up there on a horse in broad daylight. So Ellie's like, okay, got it, on foot, on foot, middle of the night. So they kind of hole up and they chill. Meanwhile, we go back to Isaac, and it was really funny because at first I was like, where the heck are they going with this scene? Because Isaac's in the kitchen and he's, talking about how he really loved to cook and that's how he would impress women. And I was like, wow, that's really nice. And he's talking about the copper pots that are hanging on the wall and how he always wanted one of those pots. He says they're like one of the best pots. And he said, he takes it off and he puts it on the fire. And he's like, oh, well, he's like, they don't stay very hot like the cast iron pans do. And I'm like, what does he care about? Is he going to make something right now? And then he grabs it and he says something about, but this will be a good one for interrogation. And I'm like, oh, and it cuts to him. He has one of the Seraphites tied up naked. So the Seraphite, of course, is like, not willing to give up any information about where the rest of his crew is. And he's, like, basically like, I believe that she'll protect me, that his goddess will protect him. I believe that she'll protect me. And he's like, and Isaac is like, you do realize that she was just like a person. Like, she was just a person. She wasn't like, a deity. And then he says that there's some people who believe, that's why I got confused, because he said scars, and he said there's some scars who believe, who understand that she was just a regular person. And then the guy is like, heretics. And like, I was like, of course. But so then he takes the pen and he says to him to hold out his hand. So the guy holds out his hand and he burns him with the pan, and you hear him screaming and he's in pain. And so then he says, okay, we can keep doing this. I can burn every single part of your body with this pan, or you can tell me what I want to know. And so the guy holds out his hand slowly, like basically saying, you're going to have to burn me. I'm like, he doesn't say anything, but it's basically, you're going to have to burn me because I am not giving up any information. Well, Isaac decides, well, if you're not going to give up any information, I'm just going to end you. And he just bleck it in his head twice, a couple times. So yeah, he just, he doesn't drag it on any longer than he needs to, which I think is pretty smart, actually. So then we go back to Ellie and Dina, and they are now going to be breaking into this wolf territory. And they get in there, they are, trying to explore. And then as they walk into one room, there are bodies hanging from the ceiling of wolves. Not the animal, the people. Bodies hanging from the ceiling of wolves, and they are disemboweled. If you don't know what disemboweling is, don't look it up, but do look it up. But yeah, they're disemboweled. And of course, Dina has a reaction to this. She gets sick again. And Ellie's just kind of like, who could have done this? Like, she's looking around, and then she sees the symbol that was on the robes of the people that she saw in the pit. And she's like, they did this. And Dina's like, oh man. And then at that point, they hear wolves coming to see what's going on. So they go and they hide because they don't want to get caught by the wolves and blamed for this. At the very least, blamed for this, because they're like, hey, we had nothing to do with that. So they walk in and they see all the bodies hanging, and they're like, oh my God, and then the head of the group is like, we need to search this place and find, he's like, he tells one guy to go cut the bodies down, and he says, and we need to search this place and we need to find who did this. And one of the other guys is like, can we just like not do that? And then he's like, no, he's like, there's intestines all over the floor. Like, we are not going to just run away. So they start looking around, and of course, Dina and Ellie are freaking out. They're trying to find a place to go and hide. And sure enough, the wolves spot them. And so it starts this big chase. They go and they run and they hide, and they're hiding again, and all the wolves are throwing flares on the ground. Bad idea. So they're walking around trying to find Ellie and Dina. Ellie and Dina are hiding, and then you start hearing growling and clicking. So then the one of the wolves says to the other one, he's like, I thought you said this building was clear. And then he's like, it was. And then the other wolf's like, it was. So then Dina does the thing that she did in episode, I believe it was episode 2. I believe it was episode 2 where she counts how many, oh no, I think it was episode 1. Yeah, it was episode 1 where she counts how many infected they are. So she's listening, and she holds up her fingers, and when she gets to 5, she looks at Ellie in horror and realizes there's more than she can count. And then the horde just comes running down the alleyway, and it is just brutal. They're running. So Ellie and Dina are like, let's get out of here. They go and they jump on, it looks like a subway train almost, and they jump on that, and of course the infected are banging on the train trying to get in there, and they go inside of the subway train, and then they're just running trying to get away. They get to one part where they run and they jump into another car and they slam the door, and then a clicker comes out, and I'm like, well, where was that guy? He just comes out and he's like, but he's behind the door and he's like in the window, like clicking in the window. So then they are running, and all the infected, now there's a bunch of windows, so all the infected are now jumping through the windows to try to get at them. Dina realizes they can't go out, so they have to go up. And so she opens the emergency hatch. Ellie helps her up, and then she helps Ellie up. They go running, and as they're running, here comes the infected again. They're still swarming, and they climb over a fence, and then they climb over the fence, and the infected come and run and slam against it. Now, we already know from the episode with Abby that they can break through fences. If enough of them are pressed up against it, the fence will eventually give. So the two of them run up an escalator. They get to a door, and it's one of those revolving doors. It's not really a door. It's more like a stopper kind of thing. Like, I don't know, but it's revolving. But of course, because it's probably been sitting there for like 10 years at this point now, or maybe even longer than that, it's rusted. It's rusted, and they can't really, and Ellie's pushing and pushing and pushing. She finally gets through, and then Dina comes and tries to do it, and she's trying to pull to help Dina. And then an infected starts to run up, so Ellie puts her arm in front of Dina so that the infected bites her, obviously, because she's immune. Dina sees this. Dina's like, what the hell did you just do? So she eventually gets Dina in. They run to a safe spot, and when they get to the safe spot, Ellie turns around and Dina has her gun drawn and pointed at her. Ellie's like, whoa, what? What are you doing? And Dina's like, why did you do that? Like, why did you let that thing bite you? And she's like, listen, she says, I would die for you, but that's not what this is. And she goes, you have to trust me. She goes, I'm going to bandage my arm. I'm going to go to sleep. And when I wake up tomorrow, I'm still going to be me. I'm still going to be me. She's like, and you can sit as far away from me as you feel comfortable, and you can keep that gun pointed on me all night. So Dina lets her go, and she bandages her arm up. She lays down, goes to sleep. At one point, there's water dripping on her face from the rain, and she kind of freaks out, and she's like rubbing her face. And then Dina turns on the flashlight, and then she's like, "No, I'm not turning." She's like, "It was just there was water on my face, there was rain on my face." And so then she starts to explain to Dina that she is immune, and she shows her the bite, and Dina's like freaking out, still holding the gun and looking at her. And then Dina drops the bombshell that I already knew was coming. She's pregnant. If you don't remember, Dina used to date Jesse, who's now part of the council. She used to date Jesse, and obviously stuff happened, and now she's pregnant. And I knew it from the episode prior when she threw up, and then she said that normally doesn't happen to me. I was like, she's probably pregnant. If that doesn't happen to her on a normal basis, why would this be the thing that makes her sick? I was like, she's probably pregnant. And then so when she dropped the hint that when she dropped that bombshell, not even the hint, she said, I'm pregnant. It was like, oh, so then her and Ellie, they start making out. It's a, little scene. They loving on each other and, all this stuff. And then the next morning they wake up and they're cuddling and stuff. And then they kind of start talking. And Dina's like, I was so anxious to tell you because, I just didn't know what you would want. She tells her that she knew the entire time that she liked her, and that Ellie wasn't good at hiding it, and that she also was kind of forced into the closet by her mother when she was younger. She told her mother that she liked both boys and girls, and her mom was like, no, you only like boys. So she grew up with this hatred of that side of herself that likes girls. and she tried to be with guys, and she tried with Jesse, and she liked Jesse, but she didn't like him, and I just, I'm like, yeah, she's probably either bisexual, leaning more towards women, or she's just fully a lesbian. Who knows? It's the apocalypse. You can be whatever you want to be. So then Ellie's kind of like, well, how do you know that you're pregnant? And so she pulls out pregnancy tests. That's what she found in the pharmacy. And she has a bunch of pregnancy tests. And she gives them to Ellie, and they're all positive. And Ellie's like, okay. And then she's like, wow. She's like, so we're going to have a baby. Because, now they're a couple. So she's like, we're going to have a baby. And she's like, yeah. And then she's like, me, you, and Jesse. And she's like, it is Jesse's baby, right? And then Dina just gives her a look. And she goes, we're going to be like a family. She's like, I'm going to be a dad. Which I love that line. She's like, I'm going to be a dad. And I'm like, yeah, basically, yeah, you'd be a dad. You'd be the dad of the relationship. So, now they're together and everything's happy. But then her and Dina leave the area where they were to be safe, and they look out and they realize that, there's the wolves are, up ahead, and they know that they could possibly get to them and do something. And of course, now that Ellie knows that Dina's pregnant, she's like, you don't have to come with me. Everything's changed now. Everything's changed because you're pregnant. And Dina's like, oh, I know. And then she grabs her hand and she's like, she says, we're doing this together. And then that's where the episode ends. So basically everything seems to be progressing towards, there's going to be a big fight at some point. So now let's get into my thoughts and feelings about these last two episodes. Let me take a big gulp of water because I'm yapping too much. So episode 3 was kind of slow for me. Obviously, I don't want to make that to sound like it's a complaint, because in TV you do kind of need slow episodes that slow things down a little bit. You do need episodes that kind of flesh things out, and that definitely was that kind of episode. It wasn't a bad episode necessarily. It was a good setup for what's to come. We got introduced to a new group of possible enemies. We got to see what the wolves are really packing. And we also got to see a little bit more between Dina and Ellie and their friendship and like how it was blossoming. But at the same time, it was a slower episode, and it definitely, going from episode 2, which was so fast paced and so intense, to episode 3, which was kind of mellow. I will say this, it was kind of like a little breather from the first 2 episodes, in my opinion, which just had a lot of tension in them. This episode, 4th episode, definitely picked up the pace a lot more. Like I said, when I was watching the 4th episode, I paused it for like a second because I had to check something on my phone. And when I looked up, I realized that there was only a few minutes left. And then I clicked play, and then it was over like very shortly after that. So it moved fast, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I really liked that we got so much in what felt like such little time. It was probably just over an hour, but we got so much information, so much, that we learned. We learned about where the wolves kind of came from. We got that little precursor into that because we saw Isaac joining up with that woman and turning his back on Fedra and killing the Fedra soldiers. We also learned about the Seraphites, if that's really their names. We learned a little bit more about them, and we got to see how brutal they actually are with the disemboweling. And we also got romance between Ellie and Dina that's substantial, with the talk of a possible family if everything goes well. So it gave you a lot in such a short period of time. And I'm always down for a zombie chase scene. I know these aren't technically zombies, but a zombie chase scene, I'm always down for that. They're just very adrenaline pumping for me, and I definitely feel like this one was good. It wasn't as good as the one in episode 2. The one in episode 2 is still like, that's goated right there. But this one in this episode was definitely, I was tense a little bit. I was like, ooh. Every time something was happening, I was like, oh, girls, you gotta keep running. Like, don't stop for like 2 seconds to like look at something, just go. And I know they were probably trying to figure out where they could go, which is valid. But at the same time, I'm like, I'd just be running. I would just be running. And that's probably why I would get infected. But it was really cool. It was really a good chase scene. And I'm glad that we are having more of those. This week's episode was really good. Really liked it a lot. I'm really excited to see next week's episode. Like I said, next week there won't be a recap. There'll just be the Yellow Jackets video. And the week after that, we'll double up. I don't think we have that many episodes left in the season. I'm not sure. Maybe we're halfway there, maybe we're just a little less than halfway there. I don't know for sure. But I'm really enjoying this season so far. Like I said, I'm gonna give a skull rating at the end of the whole season. But so far, I'm really liking this. I'm really liking this season. You know, it's phenomenal. So that's all I really have to say. Let me know down in the comments if you liked these 2 episodes, if you thought these 2 episodes were good or bad, or however you felt about them. Let me know, because I like to hear what people have to say about things. If you like the video, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Anything you do that helps me know that you enjoyed what you just saw. Next will be the Yellow Jackets video next week. Be on the lookout and prepared for that. And yeah, that's all I got. Oh, socials. I'm at Creepy Critiques on everything but X. I don't use Twitter, X, whatever the heck they call it. I don't really use social media at all, but I am on there. So yeah, go check me out over there. I have a website. It's plugged in the description. I will talk about that more at length when I actually start posting on it again. And yeah, that's gonna be it for me. That's gonna be it for me. Thank you all for joining me, and I will see you next time with another Creepy Critique.